Hi, welcome back to City Steaders. My name is Jess, and we're here in the kitchen today to learn about pressure canning. When I first thought about trying pressure canning for the first time, it was so intimidating to me. I literally had a pressure cooker in my basement for probably about 10 years. I always wanted to try it, but I never had the courage to go ahead and try it because I heard horror stories about pressure canners exploding or your jars inside exploding, and it just really scared me. So hopefully today, as I explain how simple it is, I can give you the courage to try it out yourself. So the first thing I need to do as we talk about pressure canning is go over the materials needed to pressure can. The first thing you're going to need is a pressure canner, of course. You can't pressure can without a pressure canner. This is mine. This is a Presto. It has the dial plus the weight, and we'll talk about this later. You're also going to need canning lids and rings. And the last thing you need are jars. And I have these full of hot water, as you can see, because when I put my hot liquid in there, I don't want the jars to break because the jars are cold and the liquid's hot. That temperature change causes the jars to break. So I don't think everybody does this. I just like to be extra careful and leave some hot water in there while I'm preparing everything else. Here are two other pieces of equipment that are nice to have when you're pressure canning. I use the funnel to pour the liquids in the jars, and this just helps grab the jars when they're hot. I've come to the place where I don't really use this anymore. I probably should. I just grab them straight out of the pressure canner, but there you go. There's some extra tools to help. Okay, so the next step is filling up our pressure canner with water. 3 inches is the required minimum for water that you want to have in the bottom of your pressure canner. I usually fill up to about halfway up the jar. Pressure canners usually come with this piece to go inside that your jars sit on top of, so let's put that inside of there. A lot of times when you're pressure canning, when you're done with the process and you pull out your jars, you'll notice this white ring around them, and especially inside of your pressure canner, you'll see it as well. Something that is supposed to help prevent that from happening is by putting a little bit of vinegar inside before you pressure can. So we're gonna throw a little splash of vinegar inside the pressure canner before we start the process. So today I'm gonna do one of the most simple things to can, and that's bone broth. So I'm gonna show you what I do to start the process of bone broth. And over here, I have my funnel, and I have a strainer to strain out all the bits in the bone broth, and then I'm gonna use a cup for a scoop. So let's get into it. So we're gonna go ahead and start scooping this into our jars, our hot jars. This bone broth is hot, and my jars need to be hot as well. Now you want to leave some head space, so we're going to leave about that much space at the top of the jars so they don't overflow when you're pressure canning. These, the lids and the rings, it is no longer required to boil, so I'm not doing it anymore. It's just an extra step I don't want to take. So we'll put this on, put the ring on. You want to do it finger tight. Don't crank on it super hard, but just finger tight, put it on. And then we're gonna put it in the water canner. Okay, something I forgot to say in my last jar was to wipe the rims down. Make sure your rims are clean. So it's always a good idea to wipe it down with vinegar, or just take a paper towel and make sure it's clean before you stick it in the pressure cooker. Now that we're boiling, we're gonna go ahead and put our, okay, so now I'm going to turn this up to high to get the water boiling. Now I'm going to leave this weight off until I start seeing steam coming out of this spout. The steam is now coming out. So we're going to put the weight on. Now, this weight is going to start jiggling around at 15 pounds pressure. We only need to go 11 pounds pressure for chicken broth. So we're going to wait until that gets up to 11 pounds pressure. Okay, so you can see we are at 11 pounds pressure. I'm going to turn down my heat because it'll keep going up and up if I leave this heat. So I'm going to turn it down pretty low now that we got it up to, maybe we'll try a 3. So earlier I had talked about the gauge plus the weight. Sometimes you'll get a pressure canner that does not have this gauge and it'll just have weights, and it'll tell you kind of, you know, you have one for 15 pounds, maybe 10 pounds. So this is nice. I really like having both so I can see it's going above what it should be. That's why we turned it down. But it's nice to have both in case the gauge gives out. You know when this starts jiggling, you're at 15 pounds pressure. One thing that I do want you to understand is you do not start your timer until your pressure canner comes up to the right pressure. So I did not start my 25 minutes on my cans until I was at 11 pounds pressure. You do this when you don't have a lot of other things going on. Okay, our timer's going off, so it is time to remove our pressure canner from the heat. We're gonna move it over here. Make sure you lift it up and move it so you don't scratch your oven. As you can see, our pressure is dropping. The way you know that it's time to remove the weight and open the lid is this thing will drop. This is like a little weight and it'll drop down when it's time. And I'm just gonna let this air out for another 5 minutes before I remove the lid. Okay, I've let this sit here for about another 5 minutes. I'm gonna take the lid off. It's gonna be very hot. Be careful. Ooh. Alright, so here are our cans. I am going to let these sit here for longer. You can see they're boiling inside still. I'm going to wait on these, and the reason why is because there's such a temperature extreme between inside of the pressure canner and outside here on my countertops. So I'm gonna let these cool off probably for about a half an hour to 45 minutes longer before I actually take them out. All right, we're ready to take our jars out of the pressure canner. Now before we go, there's one more important thing I want to tell you guys. When you're done canning, always remove the lids. That way, if the seal is not a good seal, you'll know. So don't ever leave the lids on after you are done with the process. Okay, well, I think that covers all the basics of pressure canning. I hope this helps encourage you if you've never tried it before, that it's really not as scary and hard as it may seem, that you can do it too. And if you have any questions that I haven't answered, please put them in the comments below. Thank you.